Welcome to Scrappy to Scalable, the podcast where we explore human-centered AI designed to level the playing field, empowering small and mid-sized businesses to compete with the giants.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to talk with Archer Lawrence, the CEO of Loophole Automation based out of Seattle. He has a great tagline that says, "We tackle boring," and he focuses on automations for the events industry, but a lot of other industries as well. And I want to welcome Archer. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about you and a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so as you said, we're Loophole Automation, and we do custom automations, custom integrations, consulting, and trainings and workshops for all kinds of businesses, but focusing right now on the niche of the events industry. We're basically just sitting down with our clients, understanding the business problems that they face, and then helping them streamline and optimize workflows by building custom tools that can cut down on tedious and repetitive tasks.
So tell me, why did you want to focus in on the events industry?
So of course, there's a lot of automation consulting companies like ours that are popping up right now, and we figured that it's important to not just try and compete against every single company that exists that's doing this. We need to find a space that we have some kind of special domain expertise in that is presented with different kinds of problems. So my background, actually, I came from the events industry. I started doing consulting work at a catering company called Foods Catering, and saw there that the particular kind of pressures that face catering and events, like management companies and DJing companies and stuff like that, are unique. Specifically, this sort of seasonality push. It gets super, super difficult when a lot of your business is feast or famine in these really, really high pressure months. And that means that any kind of bottleneck is far more painful, and that any automation we can implement in that space is a huge relief and results in them being able to do more events a year and them, really being able to scale their business. So I personally, doing the work that I saw all these different verticals within these companies that could really use automation. And then as we spun up the company, we just kept finding more and more of these businesses outside of catering, moving into other things, even like floral and rental companies that all have relatively similar processes because they all deal with events. It's a similar sort of routine. And we think there's just a lot of space there for us to grow into to be solving these types of problems.
So what are the biggest problems that you're seeing, like, on a consistent basis between companies? Like, what are the big pain points for your clients?
So first and foremost, everyone lives in email. In most companies, that's sort of the core, right? But what's happening is people are getting this massive amount of inquiries, and getting back to them, just first of all, but just responding to them and having that response feel personalized and feel like that client really matters. Let's say in particular, like a wedding, right? People don't really want an automated, just flat out sort of generic templatized response. They want to feel that was personalized and that the information that they gave in that inquiry really, was heard by a person and responded to. So managing that initial inquiry. And once there is enough information collected through the sort of back and forth, you have to put together a proposal. And that proposal is absolutely critical. If you get that back in 3 days, well, someone else is going to go back in 2, and someone else is going to back in 1. And so even if you have a superior product, speed is critical for that. And putting together a proposal, depending on the type of company, for a full service catering company, that's everything from food, decor, what kind of staff you need. It's such a complex process to put it together that the delay on providing that proposal loses business just flat out. That's what it is. And so you have to, A, respond to these people quickly, B, be able to collect all the information across all the different verticals of your business, package that nicely, and present it. I think those two in particular are really common issues we see.
So when you're talking about those verticals, are you talking about when you're putting a proposal together, your automation solution that you installed in these businesses, gathered that information and put the proposal together in a much, much faster time than you'd have to do it manually?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So our very first client was an event management company called Caldor Events, and they had basically like a checklist that the client would fill out of all the different kinds of lighting and again, decor, anything like that. The different vendors they might need to work with all in one document. But then once they have that checklist, they have to go to a Google Sheet and they have to go down all of the different pricing, all the different specifics about that. And from that Google Sheet, just add up all of the totals, type all of that into their proposal. And then for not all clients, but for some of them, they also do this timeline. And this timeline is ridiculous. It could take 5 to 8 hours because it's months and months ahead of time. They have to be coordinating all of these different vendors. And for the clients that really care, they want to know that each of those things are moving forward. And depending, they're basically saying we need to coordinate with our lighting people. That takes a certain amount of time, right? And so that's a nice set block. But let's say that the inquiry didn't come in until that timeline needed to be shortened. Now they got to by hand go and adjust all of the timelines. And so that went from basically, I think they were saying something between an hour or two to make up the proposal. And like I said, 5 to 8 hours to make that timeline. We basically just took the checklist, took their Google Sheet with all the pricing and the details, took that timeline, and then took their proposal and made it so that you click one button, the checklist populates all of the proposal items, all of the timeline items, and you get out at the end these 2 documents that you can send to the client in 2 minutes, I think is how long it takes. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that must have made your clients so happy.
100%. And we will get to this, I'm sure, as we get deeper into this, but that experience where someone who does this, I think somewhere between 40 and 60 times a year, they're doing this process over and over and they see it done in seconds. They just did not believe that was possible. That, creating that magic for them, that's why they come back. That's why they want to continue to be clients, because oftentimes they're skeptical. They're not super familiar with the kind of work that we do, that they see our work and our case studies and think, okay, maybe I get that result. But when they see it, it blows them away. And that's us. And of course, the amount of time and effort we put into understanding what the problems are and digging into their systems. But it's also these emerging tools. That's the magic that, AI and automation can do for them.
Let's talk a little bit more about that onboarding call, because I know that the data that you put into these systems is going to be super crucial. So what was it like for you to, do you have your own platform that they can log on to, or is it a third-party platform that you've set them up on based on the systems that you created?
So we are a custom automation solution company. So what ends up happening is that there's a lot of products on the market that are pre-built and they can work for thousands of different companies, plug and play. And we take a different approach, which is that those things usually onboard people, offboard them on their existing systems and onboard them somewhere else, and specifically events industry companies. But I think a lot of companies don't like that process. So what we do is we always have a discovery call where we are just as curious as we possibly can, just asking question after question after question of, how does it actually work for you guys? Because it really seems that all of these companies have proprietary systems, they have proprietary processes that are an accumulation of all the knowledge of that company, and that by trying to move them somewhere else, there's a lot lost in that process. And sometimes it is required, right? But typically we basically look at their existing software stack, and then the automation tool we use is called make.com, and it's just great. Yeah, make.com. It's similar to Zapier, if you've ever heard of it. We can basically just connect to these different APIs that their existing platforms have, and then move that data around between them. And we don't always use AI in our solutions. In fact, that's a big thing that we try and be clear with our clients, that oftentimes you don't want to use AI, and we try to avoid using AI when not necessary, right? Because it can introduce errors, hallucinations from the models and stuff like that. We can, in that make.com flow, integrate different AI modules. But for total events that didn't have any AI, that was basically just connecting Google Sheets, Google Docs with make.com.
So basically, you're creating the system that will enable them to not manually do things. I mean, I love it on your website. You talk about, we do the boring stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
I think it's so great because so many things in business are tedious. I hate the tedious stuff in our business. It's like, if I could get somebody else to do that, that would be amazing. So having that solution to get rid of the tedious, boring stuff. Where do you find in your automations, where do you find the points where your data creates an error. Like that's always super frustrating on our side. Like, where are you finding the errors and how do you resolve them? That's always, I know this gets a little bit tedious into the.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, that the systems are an accumulation of the knowledge of these businesses. The first thing that comes to mind are these sort of idiosyncrasies of these different companies. A lot of them have unique terminology, names, and things like that, shorthand that we're not familiar with. And as you set up specifically, if we're talking just on the sort of deterministic non-AI stuff, we have to know all that. We have to get in and find each of those little idiosyncrasies. And so setting up systems that are totally seamless and you're not going to have any errors means that you have to go down to the nth degree, the 99.9%, every little instance where there might be a unique naming convention or something like that. So I think that's a common one of, and I think, again, that's why the custom solutions is so important, is that a lot of people find all-in-one platforms are not all-in-one for them because there's a lot of externalities, right? That they can't migrate into these systems because they're just, again, like if you think of a full-service catering company or events management company, every event is incredibly unique. And so some little detail that a client asked for, we have to make a system that's robust to that, So I think that's on the deterministic side. And then anytime we work with large language models or vision transformers or anything like that, you are inherently going to have hallucinations. That is just something that you need to budget in, and you can't build systems with AI that are they can't be for solutions that are absolutely critical to the business and have no human oversight. So we always try and educate our clients that we need a human in the loop for those AI-driven processes to verify the information is correct. And, of course, that's prompt engineering and being able to actually guide these models. That's a whole discipline in itself to reduce those hallucinations. But yeah, I would say those are the two sort of main places that we see it.
I think it's pretty critical because, when you're using AI, it's not done completely. You have to have some oversight and you have to have some review process because it'll spit out something that you're like, what are you talking about here? This is not anything related to what I'm talking about. So I think that's a really, really good point, is like AI is great and it will help you be super efficient, but you still have 20% of the work still needs to be done by a human being just checking everything. And it makes me wonder, like, in terms of your onboarding, like I imagine your onboarding call and your discovery call is pretty lengthy. I mean, if you're going to go over every minute detail of a business, what does that actually look like? Are you on the call for a couple hours, or is it multiple sessions that you're dealing with?
So, of course, in our interest in moving fast, we try and answer as many questions as we can in that initial call. But yes, it usually consists of, well, let me just step one. We deal with so many different clients. Like some clients, when they show up, we're super lucky. Our first client showed up completely aware and understanding deeply what automation was, already identified a use case exactly. She had all the credentials, all of the platforms basically mapped all the way out for us. We just need to execute it. But as we've gotten further and further and all these different clients, we have had clients that show up and it couldn't even really define the word automation, right? And so, writing ends up being an educational session, right? And I think, yeah, that's definitely going to push us maybe into that hour and a half long call that we have to sort of move them down the chain of what is automation, how can it apply to your business, what are all the platforms, what are your processes, things like that. So I think that's, we try and, position ourselves as people first and curiosity first. So we don't pitch really like much in that call. I think this comes from sort of my user experience and product management background of we should not answer a question that hasn't been asked yet, basically. We should be sitting there and defining the problem in as much detail as we possibly can, get from them any documents that outline their SOPs or are relevant to the process that they would like automated, and then we go and we do some scoping. So we have internal conversations about every sales call ends with we go back and we debrief and we try and work through in our head how we think it's going to work, go over whatever documents they have, actually access their systems and look around and see all the different edge cases and things like that, and then follow up with them, with a proposal that says, we generally think this is how it's going to be done. this is what we think the scope is going to be. And then we'd love to do a follow-up call and get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty from there. So yeah, it is a process. And you also can't expect people to be able to immediately answer every single detail of their process. Much of it is something they've done, even if it's for 10 or 15 years they've been doing it. It's totally, it's memorized. It's just muscle memory. And so what you end up doing is building initial prototypes. They test it. And that's when they go, oh my, right, I didn't even know. I forgot we always do this one thing. And so that's why as well, it has to be a collaborative, longer term relationship. As you learn more about their systems over time, as they learn more about how your system's going to work, it's typically a very integrated. We sit on calls, we work through tests, demos and stuff with them, let them use it for a little while, get feedback, and continue to iterate on it. That's usually the process.
Yeah, I've noticed that with a lot of these consultants, like some of the metrics that they use for success was it delivered on time and are we on budget? But I think that's one of my questions I want to talk to you about is I think that is a really kind of old school way of looking at things, because it's masking poor client outcomes. What do you think how do you think consultants should be measuring the results for their clients instead of just I'm on time and I'm on budget? How do you measure success for your clients?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because those metrics are honestly more important for you than for them, right? Yeah, exactly as you said, it allows you to sort of circumvent the more difficult process of really getting to understand deeply what the experience of your solution is for the client, right? It's a much more subjective process. And I also think that at least that we find, actually being on time and on budget is not the most important thing as far as having the emotions of the client be sort of fulfilled. They got engaged with you so that their problem would be solved. And many of them are skeptical that it can be or can be totally, completely solved. And so they are willing to be patient on time and pay a little bit more money in order to get the fully complete system that they feel covered every single issue that they started with. So yeah, so what are our metrics? It's an interesting question, because I really do think it's more interpersonal. I also think, okay, so since the beginning of the company, we have really gone on this arc, shifted from communicating about business value to hours saved and dollars saved, which I think is important. Of course, you want those up so people get a tangible sense, but it's really more that people don't like boring work and people are overwhelmed in these busy seasons. So what are you trying to solve? You're trying to solve the emotions of the people who are going to be using your tools, right? And so, one of the things we heard from one of our clients was this idea of, they with similar proposal generation process that before, they were head down in their computer, they'd, get up and start their day just typing, and now they just press a button, sit back with their coffee, take a sip, wait for it, like those 2 minutes for it to finish. And that is a success metric. That's what you want to hear.
Yeah, because it frees up their mental capacity. It frees up their hours. And that brings me to a perfect next question, because in your website, it talked about analog plant rentals, and you save them 15 hours a week. Now, that's impressive, just saving 15 hours a week. But then I was thinking about the long-term effect of that and how you price based on the long-term effect of that. Because think about it, if 15 hours a week is 780 hours a year with an 8-hour workday, that is 97 days of paying somebody to do that work that you saved them a year. That's over 3 months of a salaried full-time 40-hour-a-week employee that you saved them. So that compacted over years is a massive amount of money that they have saved. So how are you pricing your solution based on the long-term impact of that?
100%. So I think this has been an interesting learning lesson as to where the market is going. Is we have gone sort of back and forth between value-based pricing and hourly-based pricing. And of course, adjusting that hourly to be a little bit more value-based, sort of, tucked within it. We don't find that people, it's a much harder sell, although you can give them the numbers up front. to say, this is how much it's going to cost, give us, X number of dollars, and it's going to pay off across however many months, especially because there are other people in the market. And if you do value-based pricing, other people will compete and do hourly. So we try and do this sort of in between, which is that, look, we need an integration fee for the work that we do up front. This is just our time. And like I said, that's set pretty high because that's the kind of work that we do. And it does require a lot of time for very custom systems. And then we also have monthly recurring subscriptions or annual subscriptions to cover both any maintenance stuff that we do, but also to capture some of that value. So it's this sort of in between of, some people are willing to do much higher subscriptions over a longer period of time, but we are still, I would say, developing our pricing model around that exact question because, like I said, it's difficult to compel people right up front that this is the return they're going to get, especially, like I said, because a lot of people are skeptical that this can be as comprehensive as they are hoping it to be in the end. But you're right, exactly. Yes, it's a lot of return over a long period of time. And so that's why we try and have that subscription to be capturing that. And then we can, of course, recurring revenue is super important, right?
I assume that would be a huge marketing pitch, but you're saying that not everyone is skeptical. Your clients can be skeptical of that pitch because they just are not familiar with the solutions, right?
Exactly, 100%.
So how do you get over it? How do you handle that objection with clients? I'm just curious.
So this is something we haven't gotten to yet, but we are serving a pretty hyper-local community. It's about having them get in contact with someone they already know who's our client, who has fallen in love with our solutions and is just so excited to see the end result. I think those people can sort of speak through that gap, right? That they don't know what it will look like at the end. These client testimonials and things like that, and direct communication between them. We say, hey, give them a call and see what they think about this, and if they think the return was there. I think that's the biggest thing, because we can, throw numbers out and make big pitches, all day, but when there are people who have actually seen the results of the work and, are really impressed, and it's just a much more, they have no reason to lie, right? These people have no reason to lie to say yeah, we love it, right? So I think clients hear that and go, okay, well, I know that person personally, and if they are feeling this way, then I would love to feel that way too. I'd love to be that excited about the solution. So,
have you ever done any kind of video testimonials of your clients that had good results?
Yes, absolutely. So we've just started that. Analog Plant Rentals, we just did a long piece with her in Bradfield. And yeah, that was fantastic. And then, we've been, of course, just collecting other smaller testimonial things for our website, right? But I have a background in videography as well. And so, it's pretty low friction for us to go set up a little interview with them. And we've started to collect those. And I think those are it's so important. If we're a human first business, you want to see someone have that light up, as they talk about the solution and what their experience has been. So yeah, definitely.
That would be a great way to just give some social proof. I think it's a really smart thing. One of the things I was going to ask you about is, I would call it the implementation valley of death, which is basically consultants will have this really great strategy, they'll implement it, and then they will hand it off to the client, and they're like, all right, we got you set up, we're working on some things for a couple months, and now here you go. And then the client, sometimes they fail after the implementation. How do you avoid that client failure? Obviously with your systems in place, but I've seen this happen a lot with business consultants, is that, they have this amazing strategy and they implement it. And then once they walk away, then it makes it a lot more challenging for the client. Do you ever have issues with that, or how do you avoid that basically?
Yeah, we haven't yet. I think
that's good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think what it takes is a lot of patience that I think I was alluding to earlier. It's not about just building a tool and handing it off. You have to really sit with them as they use that tool. Sometimes literally, watch them use it, right? And see what they think, and keep a open dialogue for a long time. We could have even moved on to another solution and built something else in their business, and 2-3 months later, they say, hey, this thing is really tripping us up. Is there any way we can make an adjustment? Part of our pricing model allows for that kind of after the fact updates and iterations and things like that. So I think it's just, even the idea of saying we hand it off to them and then we disappear, I don't think that's a very good strategy, because you want a recurring client, right? You want to have a very collaborative over a long period of time relationship. Like I said, either you're moving on to a new solution or you're just keeping in touch with them, right? So I think, yeah, it's just about being very patient to let them use it and not say it's done once we built it in the way that we think it'll work. It's done once they have done over and over and over, and we've ironed out every little detail. And, honestly, again, that's good for us, right? We keep a relationship with them as they think of a new idea or a new extension or something like that. So I think it's patience. I think it's patience and close communication with your clients. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's opportunities for further integration with other automations and other tools. Are you exploring that with each one of your current clients too?
100%. Look, even the first client that I had talked about, the very first one who came totally prepared. Of course, when someone actually sees an automation work in their business, the next thing they do is think about other ways that it can work, right? Because they have now been educated as to what are all the different ways it can be used and what are all the limitations and things like that. And so, especially with clients who, like I said, come in completely cold, they have no idea what it is. What our first solution for them is just education about where else in their business they can automate things. So that's very, very common. One of our clients, we built a staffing, sort of added into their Airtable. They had a very rudimentary system for managing events, and we built out a whole staffing solution that was, in that same platform. And using Make.com and specifically Airtable, what they were using, it is very easy to connect. And, the next thing, can we also do these on-site consultation scheduling that's different from our main staffing? Like, it just sort of builds and builds and builds and builds. So it's also, when we come to a client, we say, hey, look, the end result of what we want to do for you is transform your entire business. We know companies like yours, and we understand that in all these different verticals, you have these problems, and that we would love to be the people to help you transform all of them, connect all of them. Your whole business, from initial inquiry to providing your service, is a clean, fluid, straight line. But that's a lot to ask right off the bat for us to come and touch every single thing that you have, every software. So let's get started on one. Let's show you that we can do this work, and we'll show you how it works and what that experience is, and we will go from there. But of course, that's the ultimate goal, and what we find is the highest value with our clients is when we get deeper and deeper and deeper into their systems and stack solutions on top of each other. That's, yeah, definitely.
It makes a lot of sense. Like, you gotta date somebody before you marry them.
Yeah.
You're dealing with people who are probably solo entrepreneurs or small to medium sized companies. So like, it's their baby, and relinquishing up some of that control. Do you have any? I'm sure that's a big factor in when you're dealing with a lot of these business owners, is like, I don't want to relinquish control, but you got to show them this solution works here, and then you kind of expand a little bit more and more after they build your trust with them.
Yeah, here's the thing, though, that a lot of these people who get specifically in the events industry, the reason that they're here is because they love entertaining. They love being a DJ or a florist or a catering company. They don't love the admin. That's not really why they started it. And so
who does, right?
When they run into bottlenecks in the admin, if someone is showing up saying, hey, you don't have to do anything other than describe how you do your current process, we will take that off your hands, we will build something, and we will deploy it, and it's a very seamless transition. They're like, please do, please take it off my hands, because I didn't want to do this in the first place. So now, if we said, hey, we're going to come in and we're going to take your set list, we're going to go make you, if we're going to take away your floral and how you build your arrangements, they would say, never. Are you kidding me? That's like, never, right? So thankfully, we're coming to them, and the things that we're trying to solve are the things that are not really their baby. That's not their baby. That's just the bureaucracy required so that their baby can go live out in the world. So I think that does help with that handoff. But you're right. It's a big deal.
I think you're totally right. It's like, people want to do the thing that they're good at. They want to do this other crap that is boring, is tedious, it takes up a lot of time. They want to get to the good stuff. So if you're enabling a solution that lets them do that, they can A, have more time and enjoy their life. B, they could take that time and try to get more clients and grow and prospect more.
100%.
It just depends on the client's goal, which I'm sure you're really, really intimate with their goals. Because if they just want more time, then you can do that. If they want to build and scale, then you can create a solution for that as well.
100%. A lot of people, we have heard this specifically, like solopreneurs, they're doing that because that's what they prefer. That's what they want. They're not looking to hire more people. And so exactly, you want to actually know, why are we doing this? Are we doing this just so that you don't have to do this work at 8 p.m., on a Sunday, right? Or are we doing this because you're looking to actually scale the business and we need to build a solution that is forward thinking, is very particularly scalable, things like that.
Yeah. Because it's always about the client's dream outcome, right? And then you mentioned that earlier. It's like, what is the emotional thing that is going to make their life better or their dream scenario?
Absolutely, 100%.
I always run into this issue for me. I was like, we could do this, we can make it bigger, better. And then they're like, no. I just want more time, So it's like, not putting my own visions of their goal and just actually really, really listening to them, what they want. That's the most important part. It sounds like you do that really well.
Yeah. I think it's really critical. What is the problem that you're solving? That's where you start, because you got to start.
Let me ask you a question. So what is your dream for your company? What does your company look like? What do you want it to look like in 5-10 years or in 2 years?
Yeah, right.
It changes so fast, right?
Yeah, I'm like 10 years. Wow, you mean after AGI? And I think so. Right now, we're really focused on the two verticals of custom solutions. That's a vast majority of the work we do, and then business consulting, right? So those are one-on-one client relationships, but something that I am really compelled by personally in our business is workshops, lectures, things like that, because I think we can only touch so many people with these one-on-one interactions, and the events industry in particular, there's a huge gap here, and people can empower themselves. We don't necessarily have to do all of this work for them. There are smaller solutions, other platforms, right, things like that they can do today, right now, to improve their processes. And I think that there's a huge amount of value in just educating people. And I also think that, in particular from my experience working at a catering company, this is this analogy that I use around ChatGPT, which is that, if you go to any modern office and you say, how many people here know how to use Word? Of course, everybody's going to raise their hand, right? Well, as opposed to someone in a business being the ChatGPT person, the automation person, and they're the one doing all this work, which I was at one point in this company, it should be the other way around. When I asked, do you know how to use ChatGPT? Everyone should, right? Because it would be a huge bottleneck if only one person in a company knew how to do Word and everything had to go over to them, like specifically because of how low the barrier to entry is on something like ChatGPT. If you can do some sort of just basic training on how these things work, you will find that all of these domain experts have solutions that you, as the specialist, would never have come up with because you just didn't know that about their business, right? And so that's something in particular. Next month, we're going to be doing a workshop with the International Live Events Association, which I'm a board member of, our first, real lecture and workshop. So we're really excited to see how that works, how much value we can provide, that people just go home and the next day can start implementing that. So
when is that event?
We're still working on it. It'll be late September. We haven't picked a day yet, just because we're still looking for a vendor. But yeah, I can send you that information. Once we get.
I mean, it seems like a really, really good opportunity for people in that event space, because AI is here. It's not going away, and the companies who are adopting it and using an automated system, they are just going to go leaps and bounds way faster and higher than other people and companies who are not using that. So it just makes sense that they get on board or they get left behind.
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's the reality.
Yeah, things are moving real fast, and if you are not moving right now, you're going to be left behind, unfortunately. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really focused on that one new branch of our business that I'm excited about. But in general, yeah, we want to have a suite of, very qualified, very curious and personable builders who can sit with, a larger pool of clients to be able to build out these custom solutions. And then from there, we have already found and are moving in this direction that there are going to be problems that face a lot of companies that are very similar. And if we can build templatized tools, not quite full SaaS, right, but more like high-touch SaaS, where we can much more quickly deploy them in a business, it's going to be a lot more scalable for us. Once you've found a problem and you've found a solution and you've totally streamlined it, that's just a lot easier for these companies to onboard on. So I would say, like I said, there's the custom solutions, there's the consulting, there's these templatized solutions, and then maybe more sort of trainings and workshops. So that, I think, scaling the business, we don't have a cap on the number of people we want. We're excited and ready to grow headcount and client base across each of those verticals, and we will see what the market wants. We will see which one of those is really most sought after. Because also, look, the templatized thing is a great process for the client and for you, and a lot of people go down that route. But we may end up finding that the niche we solve is ones that are so custom and so complicated, they can't be templatized, right? And it just ends up being that's what we do.
Yeah. Well, Archer, really, really nice time talking with you. If someone wants to get a hold of you and use your services or bounce some ideas off you, what's the best way to get a hold of you and your website? And tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so we are loopholeautomation.com. That's how you can find us online and see some of the work that we do and reach out to us. And then if you want to email me directly, I'm archer@loopholeautomation.com. Cool. So yeah, that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time, and best of luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.